You heard about NASA's emergency press conference on Comet 3I Atlas, and you want to know what they're not telling us. Here's what's bothering me. Why did NASA's top official feel compelled to say it's not aliens before showing us a single image? When does NASA ever do that? And why did they mobilize 20 different spacecraft, from Mars rovers to the James Webb telescope, to track one routine comet? I've been through the entire press conference transcript, analyzed the images they released, and compared them to what independent scientists are saying. And folks, something doesn't add up. Subscribe to Space Aquarius and let's begin. On November 19th, NASA called an emergency briefing about Comet 3I Atlas. They'd been silent for weeks during the government shutdown while the internet went absolutely wild with speculation. Then suddenly, boom, they roll out their top brass with a stack of never-before-seen images from spacecraft across the entire solar system. But here's what caught my attention. The very first thing NASA's associate administrator said wasn't about the science. It was about the rumors. He felt compelled to address them right out of the gate. Now, when does NASA ever do that? After the initial discovery of 3I Atlas, NASA went dark. The government shutdown hit, and for weeks the agency couldn't comment publicly on anything. Meanwhile, the rest of us were watching this thing barrel through our solar system, and the speculation just exploded online. Some folks were convinced this was an alien probe. Others thought it might be some kind of spacecraft. Harvard professor Loeb was pointing out what he called 12 anomalies that made this object unique. The guy literally wrote that this could be evidence of technological life. So when they finally scheduled this press conference, you better believe people were paying attention. I watched the whole thing live, and I've been through the transcript multiple times now. Right off the bat, Amit Kshatriya, NASA's associate administrator, makes this statement.
To start with, I'd like to address the rumors right at the beginning. I think it's important that we talk about that. This object is a comet. It looks and behaves like a comet, and all evidence points to it being a comet.
I'd like to address the rumors right at the beginning. This object is a comet. It looks and behaves like a comet, and all evidence points to it being a comet. Now, I've got to be honest with you, that's a pretty defensive way to start a scientific briefing. But then he said something that actually gave me chills. He talked about how excited he was that the world was speculating about what this could be, how it expanded people's brains to think about how magical the universe could be. That's not the language of someone shutting down a conspiracy theory, someone who understands why people were excited about the possibility. But then came the images. These are genuinely remarkable. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter caught 3I Atlas from just 19 million miles away, the closest any human-made instrument has ever gotten to an interstellar object. In that image, you can see this fuzzy white ball, which is actually a cloud of dust and ice called a coma. This thing is shedding material as it moves through space. But here's what really got my attention. NASA didn't just have one spacecraft watching this comet. They had nearly 20 different missions tracking it. 20 missions. Think about that coordination. Hubble, James Webb, the Mars rovers, spacecraft at Jupiter, even the Parker Solar Probe that's studying the Sun. They all turned their instruments toward this visitor from another star system. When does NASA ever mobilize that kind of response for a routine comet? Now let's talk about what these spacecrafts actually found, because this is where it gets really interesting. The James Webb Space Telescope looked at 3I Atlas in infrared, wavelengths we can't see with our eyes, and what it found was an unusually high ratio of carbon dioxide to water. Tom Statler, one of the scientists at the briefing, said this ratio has never before been observed in a comet at this distance from the Sun. Never before observed. Those are his words, not mine. The MAVEN spacecraft at Mars detected hydrogen gas coming off the comet, which tells us it's releasing water vapor as it warms up near the Sun. That's normal comet behavior. But the Lucy spacecraft, which was 240 million miles away, captured something else. A clear image of the comet's tail pointing away from the Sun, backlit in a way that we could never see from Earth. And here's the kicker. The SOHO Solar Observatory caught 3I Atlas crossing behind the Sun. From our perspective, they had to stack multiple images together just to see it because it was so faint. But they got it. Now, NASA's Nikki Fox made a point of saying that all this data is publicly available. Anyone can analyze it. They're inviting the scientific community, and frankly, anyone with the skills, to dig into these observations and tell them what they're seeing. That's pretty transparent for an agency that supposedly has something to hide, don't you think? But let's address the elephant in the room. What about those anomalies that Professor Loeb and others were talking about? I went back through the press conference Q&A, and there were some revealing moments. When a reporter asked about the comet's shape, Tom Statler admitted they still can't pin down the exact size. It's somewhere between 1,400 feet and 3.5 miles in diameter. That's a huge range of uncertainty. He also said the shape doesn't appear to be very elongated, which is interesting because Oumuamua was extremely elongated, and that was one of the things that made people suspicious about it. Then there's the composition issue. The carbon dioxide to water ratio is unusual. The nickel to iron ratio is different from what we typically see. The dust particles seem to behave differently. And early on, observers noticed a sunward tail, material being pushed off the comet toward the sun, which is the opposite of what you'd normally expect. Now, NASA's explanation for all of this is pretty straightforward. This comet formed in a different solar system under different conditions, so of course it's going to be different from our homegrown comets. Tom Statler used this great analogy about Kona coffee versus Sumatran coffee. They're both coffee, but they taste different because they grew in different environments. That makes sense to me. But here's what I keep coming back to. If this thing is so clearly just a comet, why did it take NASA weeks to say so? Why mobilize 20 different spacecraft? And why did they feel the need to address the alien spacecraft speculation right at the top of the briefing? Look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I've been following space exploration for decades, and I trust the scientific process. But there are some things about this press conference that just don't quite add up for me. First, the timing. They held this briefing the moment the government shutdown ended. They clearly had these images ready to go. Some of them were taken back in September and October. But they waited. Why? Second, the tone. Multiple times during the Q&A, NASA officials talked about how rare and exciting this opportunity is. Nikki Fox said that studying interstellar objects gives us a window into the deep past, potentially solar systems older than our own. Tom Statler said it gave him goosebumps to think about. That's not the language of routine science. That's the language of people who are genuinely amazed by what they're seeing. Third, and this is the big one for me, they keep emphasizing that this is just the beginning. The Parker Solar Probe data was downloaded the day before the press conference. More observations are planned as the comet continues its journey past Jupiter in spring 2026. They're still figuring out what are even the right questions to ask. In other words, they don't have all the answers yet, and they're being remarkably candid about that. So, here's what I think is really going on. I don't believe 3I Atlas is an alien spacecraft. The evidence genuinely does point to it being a comet. It's shedding dust and gas, it's responding to solar radiation the way comets do, and it's behaving consistently with the physics we understand. But I do think NASA is genuinely surprised by some of what they're seeing. This object is different enough from our solar system's comets that it's challenging some assumptions. And that's exciting because it means we're learning something new about how planetary systems form in other parts of the galaxy. The carbon dioxide to water ratio, the unusual dust properties, the speed at which it entered our solar system, these things are telling us that the conditions where this comet formed were significantly different from the conditions in our own solar system's history. And here's the really mind-blowing part. Tom Statler said there's circumstantial evidence that this comet came from a very old stellar population. It's moving 3 times faster than the average speed of stars in our local neighborhood, which suggests it came from a different, older generation of stars. This thing could be older than our sun. Older than Earth, it's literally a frozen time capsule from the early days of our galaxy, and it just happened to pass through our solar system at a time when we have the technology to study it. So what really happened at NASA's press conference? I think they did exactly what they said they were doing. They shared the best images and data they have so far on only the 3rd confirmed interstellar object in human history. They addressed the speculation head-on because they knew it was out there, and they wanted to be transparent about what the evidence actually shows. But they also made it clear that this story isn't over. More data is coming in, more analysis needs to be done, and they're inviting all of us to be part of that process. The comet will make its closest approach to Earth on December 19th. Still a safe 170 million miles away, so don't worry about that. But it'll be visible to some telescopes, and NASA will keep tracking it as it heads back out into interstellar space. Here's what I'm watching for. As more data comes in over the next few months, are we going to see more anomalies? Or are things going to start making more sense as we understand this visitor better? And here's the bigger question. If this is only the third interstellar object we've detected, and we're already seeing significant differences between them, what's that telling us about the diversity of planetary systems out there? NASA says they expect to find many more of these objects now that we know how to look for them. Each one is going to teach us something new about the galaxy we live in. And folks, I don't know about you, but I find that a lot more exciting than any alien conspiracy theory. YouTube just rolled out a new feature where you can hype videos that you think deserve more attention. If you found this breakdown valuable and you want more people to see the real story behind 3i Atlas, it actually makes a difference in getting this information out there. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We're covering every major space discovery as it happens. No clickbait, just the facts and analysis you can trust. Here's what I want to know. Do you think NASA is being completely transparent about 3i Atlas, or are they holding something back? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and honestly, some of you catch things I miss. And finally, if you've got a friend or family member who's been following this comet story, send them this video. They're probably drowning in conspiracy theories and sensational headlines. Give them the straight story instead. More updates on 3i Atlas coming as NASA releases new data. I'll see you in the next one.